I don't know. We'll wait and see. And maybe by next week, next Tuesday, those programs will I've been asked to do dedication book. They're on his way, so that's Saturday week. And the first is an absolute yes. So we'll start off with the Manjushri, praise to Manjushri, which is on
the thing.
Yes. It's great, one of these three.
My Guru, protect and Manjushri, causes heart to speak whose understanding shines forth. The teachers in the 60 ways of religion. All creatures caught in the prison of samsara, confused by the darkness of their ignorance, by their suffering, usual strain and running. And praise us in the iron chains of Haka, whose powerful sword of wisdom is in carrying away the darkness of all ignorance. And Jewish brings the new powers. Or has completed the stage changes, achieving the highest perfection for Bodhisattva, or has been pure from the beginning. O Manjushri, O Lord, along your brilliance of your wisdom, illuminate the darkness and close them. Samara,
short alphabet
Guru Jana Meda Rakamiya Daya Sanji Chedan Sajin Chonam La Chanchu Bade Dani Tasi Dagi Chushi Dibe Songi Dola Sanji Drupala Isho Sanji Chedan Sajin Chonam La Chanchu Bade Dani Tasi Dagi Chushi Dibe Songi Dola Sanji Drupala Isho Sanji Chedan Sogi Chanama Chanchu Pade Dami Kasi Dagi Chushi Dive Sonu Dora Sanji Drupala Shu Kanki Tuzeni Rumi Tawa Tumji Pambi Chari Pambi Chun Dinzi Kodam Kela Chansi No Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much. Because it's something on the Niba Chanchu to be Kajalang to Dumaki Chatang and maybe Suri Walasun, said Teresa's love, Suri Walasun, Kalasotu, Kachiki, Jigmiri Watan, 100 to not Chatang Yomugawatan. Nature motion the children, Domachu, Suri the Peos.
We're going to pick up from the point that we left off yesterday. Let's look first of all at the outline. In covering the third type of laziness, abandoning laziness that is disheartened and but virtue, we started with point C. If one makes perseverance, laziness will be arrested and one will be capable of accomplishing enlightenment. Of the 4 points in that section, today we're going to pick up from point 2, which comes out in the heading of, it is reasonable to bear the hardships that accompany working to attain enlightenment, for they are not even fraction of those lower realms of the lower realm suffering. There are 3 points in that section. First point says, as it is reasonable to fear the hardships of giving up one's arms, legs, etc. It is unreasonable to fear the hardships of giving up one's arms, legs, etc. The second says if one does not need to experience even a fraction of the lower realms suffering. And the third gives an analogy illustrating the reasonableness of bearing minor suffering in order to destroy the great disease.
There is a Tamani Kalaso Tongi Kaji Jig Meribanis and the Kala Lasobo Tangudan Jixima Chitanyama Macheba Mombetan Jiba says.
Let's look at the first point, covering 2 verses, beginning with an opinion. Having to give away my legs, arms, and so forth frightens me. The response, without analyzing what is heavy and what is light, I'm reduced to fear through confusion. Over countless billions of eons, I will be cut, stabbed, burned, and chopped up many times, but will not attain enlightenment.
Ore kawa chewa thame tu landan tu mal cheba pa pu de se de shingi ki chanju te bo min gyurus ta dire da je dang zu kaji chue chewa ya kawa chi bi kawa ya chanju jibi bi kaji kawa ya and this chi kaji duri tango goras to kaji duri ma cheba ina ani jebu ni jebu ya puch Maras, that Dinji Kaji Durilaya, that Kaji Duri Shuj, and it Kadu Yongo Samchi, and it Cham Shaba in Baina, that the Kasotaji Mishiba Rang, Mumba Rangi on Tom Semato, and it Nandri Dunga the Dorvaina, and the so Kaya Mares, Kidzing Andutaji. Chanju Duvalaya, Kaji Duri Mama Maina, and Nanzu Tse Penny, the Peshe Nansoni, here Mato, and that's how major rich. The Nansu, the Kiwi Kaki, Dunga Teta, and the any and Lidin Di Tolaya, and Kawachin, Chanju Gibi Kaki, Kawachi, Dunga Nibuti, Durgushaman, Sawanin, Durtugamar was the rock.
In order to attain the state of enlightenment, we need to persevere. Not only to persevere, there would be some difficulties that we'll encounter, and we need to develop endurance. In that sense, there are austerities that we need to bear with. If you fear those difficulties that we will encounter along the way, thinking that it will be too hard for me, I will not be able to endure them. Here Shantideva says that this fear arises because of confusion, because if you start to think of what is scared, what is fearsome, and you start to compare, for example, what will occur to you in future lifetimes, actually looking at the austerities or difficulties that we will have to bear with, making a progress towards enlightenment, there would be nothing in comparison to suffering that we might encounter upon the transference from this lifetime to the next. So should we fall into miserable states of existence, the suffering and the pain that will be experienced in those states of existence and the fear would be much greater than the austerities and the difficulties that we might bear with on the way to enlightenment. So in that sense, there's no comparison between the austerities experienced through pursuing enlightenment and the sufferings of miserable realms.
And Dinzata Chanju Drubalaya, and it Kawa Tame Balaya, and it Landram Mambu Tolaya, the Kanji Suzu and Pig, and it Luke Yanlanga Chivi, that chick, and it Luke Jimbala Soba, and Dindij, any Kanji, and it Chanju Simbi, and it Joba, Yamne Yavuch Jubantuana, and it Chanju Top said. You must see what it is.
If you practice for immeasurable eons, and you practice the deeds of the mind of enlightenment, giving away even your own body, giving away parts of your body, arms and legs and so forth, if you do not practice it well, you will not be able to attain the state of enlightenment.
The Machibi on the race, then Tanganzo, Tandado, the Kiran Lava con Jagos Lavina, Sawin in Musabatoch, the Yimba the Tinji Javalia, and it's Shuni, Tache Machibi on Shenat Remato, one Tanigi. And changes in Jabal and shoes in the rock, and it piggy. Lot of the Kivaina Yana Kandis Tobaina Yan, and it's so pound Lenny, and it Kandis Jago Chombaina, Telia Tetzam, Nansung Dungana Sink, and it's swim to be Dungachi, yung mares kerangi majibe on tan kanji mashibe on ranji mato be and timares.
In pursuing the state of enlightenment and practicing things such as giving away your own body or parts of your body, when we think of a situation where, for example, someone asks you to give them one of your limbs, give them your arms and so forth, we find it fearful. Currently, it might give rise to fear in the mind, but then that occurs without really checking out, without analyzing and investigating. Whereas when you start thinking of what is involved with attaining the state of enlightenment, and you become determined to attain the state of enlightenment, no matter what happens, even if you have to give away your own body or parts of your body, you would be willing to do so in order to pursue the state of enlightenment. There would be no fear and no suffering involved with, even in those cases in which you will have to endure certain difficulties. So it is possible to develop such determination.
아니 지금 데레스 나니네 계란 아니 까워 먹으리냐 아니 계란기 제 잠에 제 표현으로서 아니 제 표현을야 아니 류 잠에 받기 아니 비게 다제 또 세글 소바 아니 잠에 받지 제어돼 있냐 니 계란 아니 된다래 펜버지 좋아요 말해서 간지 대매 돈 계란 류 잠에 받지 아니 제버 또버 세고라 소버 제어돼 있는 된다 좋아요 말해서 근데 계란 그 당들낸 전주스님 접어는 중 계란 그 메시지 위도 스탄도 봐나 아니 전주도 기르고 이 베디 아니 로가레스라.
But not only that, when we consider the enormous lifespan or time span, that we've already been circling in cyclic existence for countless eons, being through countless of births and countless deaths, in which we have transferred for countless times between one lifetime to the next. And in that process, our body has already been cut into pieces countless times, cut and burned and beaten and so forth. And were we able to accomplish our purpose all along? We haven't accomplished our purpose so far. So then looking at the future and thinking of what is awaiting for us in the future, if we develop that great determination to pursue the state of enlightenment, even as far as there would be situations which would be difficult to bear, even as far as your parts of the body being cut and burnt and so forth, at the end, you will accomplish your great purpose. So it is of a great meaning to be willing to do so.
And there was and the Zembi Junigan, Kala Dangola Sobi, Jimba Tango, Chakavi Joba Teda, Dagi Munibi, Dan Jixienas, Teda Jimba Tongojan, Dunga Chivatan, Yami Kabat, Never Marcheva, Tolenla Mombi, Dan Jiba Siki, Jig Nubite, Tomamevan Konkovitsi, Nyawakawa Trami, to Lenchi Mayamba, Landan Tumar, Lu Jebatan. Ubata, Mesebata, Chenki Shibi, Dungan Yuki, that's a Myoya, Lu Temela, Chuseva Mato, Lanam Vichanjito Euros.
Yatsadama Rinpoche's commentary begins with stating the objection that was stated in the first two lines of verse 20. It says, well, though one achieve it through enthusiasm, I'm afraid, because one needs to practice the generosity of giving away one's legs, arms, head, and so forth. And I'm not able to engage in these difficult practices. To answer that, Shantideva says, in looking at how Getadama Rinchen paraphrases it, though one needs to practice generosity with these without having distinguished well between heavy and light suffering, one is ignorant with regards to what has to be abandoned and what has to be adopted. And one is afraid, although it is unnecessary to be afraid. While circling in cyclic existence since beginningless time, one has experienced the suffering of one's body being cut, stabbed, burned by fire, and slashed by weapons, not only once, but many times for immeasurable tens of millions of eons in the hells. But however much one has experienced this, it has only exhausted purposely the power of one's body, and one has not achieved highest enlightenment.
Terda kanji dodo di manzu kewa tomo mewan tanda badu da lu cham mewa chi tang yores. Inaya tenda ki chuyo mares. Yezi ta tanda nganzu chi ani chuyo ngontre. Dian tewa chi chuyo ngontre. Jasi chanju simi choba ta ngontre bikala ya. Ta jasi chanju simi choba la juk chini. Ani susu lu di. Ani karso ta ji. Ani simjan tangji ki chedu ta. Ani tang tu bayi na. Tenda deba chuyo res. Tangda part the time about the Tame Janjaman, Tenda Che Chomas, Tanga Lud Tang Gores, in the Tang Goalea, Tenda Yovach Tang to one, the Yaburas, but did to some shake or
In short, looking at what Shantideva says here, he says that we've been around since time without beginning and up until now, and we've already given our body away so many times, and we haven't accomplished our purpose. But in this life, we have been introduced to bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment, and to the practice of the deeds of bodhisattvas. And even if we have to give away our body for the sake of others, at least when we do it in this life, motivated by bodhicitta and the practice of the deeds of bodhisattva, it will be of meaning, it will be of purpose. If you think of doing it for the sake of other sentient being, rather than doing it without purpose and meaninglessly as it occurred so many times before, at least in this life, it would be of meaning. And also taking into consideration that at the end of our life, anyway, we will have to give away our body.
Tinza tachi kotang gongi shiba di ane tanda dembajile ya tang shabai no di genzen yorwas ra teme gchola dobai no ane pena mulu kyabachi le mulu di tachi ane tagas bigi migi wa dungin ki lu teng soraji chabai no ane di kewa manta mebale ya ta ngansong joya gyuchi chendo gore mado shema pendo keyo marwas Inzata tang goalaya, Tanda damage. Any chanju samatu, any nama nanshingi, and DJ Jucheni, and lead Tambaina, Tanda Yares.
And particularly since anyway, at the end of our life, we'll have to give away our body, in a sense that our body will be left behind. Even if we don't wish for that to happen, it will happen. So if we can do it with securing a certain purpose, a certain meaning, that'd be much greater. That would be much better. Whereas if we use the body that we have in this life for the creation of many non-virtues, upon the transference of life, which means upon our death, moving on to our next rebirth, if we fall into a miserable state of existence, to a hellish state of existence. And because of the non-virtues that we have done and accumulated, we will experience a great and prolonged amount of suffering. There would be no purpose in that whatsoever. So we have to give away our body anyway at the end of this life. And if we do it, if we use this body for a certain purpose in a meaningful way, like for example, practicing the bodhisattva conduct, practicing the bodhisattva behavior, and even if we have then to give away our body in a situation where there would be something that is difficult to do or to endure, at least that would be of purpose. And it's better than the countless times that we have done it before without any purpose.
Ani kajiki dungan di pigi ngandru dungan doba ina ya ani chatsam ya ta ani rasa yo mares tindigi dungan chimbu nyongo mares ra ngandru dungan chi tok du phaba ina ani chi kawa thame bal ya ani ngansong le ne ko yaki ro ani chagre was ro chanju dribi kachi gi dunga die kerani tyuzu yores dian tyuzu tundong jig nani ani dunga setu ya ta ani odindi yungres.
And Shantideva continues in that manner, in saying that, in saying that one does not need to experience even a fraction of the lower realm's suffering, in verse 22. And he says that it might be some suffering or difficulties that you might endure practicing the deeds of bodhisattvas in order to attain the state of enlightenment. But then when you compare that with suffering of miserable states of existence, which last for such a long time, for countless eons, really, even if you have to bear with some difficulties and suffering pursuing the state of enlightenment, the duration would be much shorter than the duration of miserable states of existence, and the suffering would be so much less significant than suffering of miserable states of existence. So really, when you think of difficulties and sufferings that we do endure pursuing the state of enlightenment, are nothing in comparison with other forms of suffering.
Dagi chanju drabaye dungan de la tsuyote sungu konga neserche lula tembi luma tembi dungashins.
So in verse 22, Shantideva says, yet this suffering for my accomplishing enlightenment will have a limit. It is like the suffering of having an incision made in order to eliminate the harm of pain, destroying it inside.
Ngandru dunga la sama dagi chanju dribi kaji gi dungan dine ngama la tena tu tongshi shindu chongyi tsuyoji zöl hava des neji sungu kongbal labi neba savi chedu lula machonsi tembi dunga zöli wa shenos.
Let's look at the commentary, which says, if one considers the suffering of the lower migrations, then the sufferings of the austerities of attaining enlightenment are of small measure and last a short time by comparison. They are also easy to bear, similar to being able to bear the sufferings of a bodily procedure to clear the harm of paralyzing pain.
Sumba nechembun jombi chedo donga chongu soribu penis memba kunjan suichi ki mediwayi nemeche tewe donga mambo ta shomshe medi chong soichas.
Let's look at the third point in that section that provides an analogy illustrating the reasonableness of bearing minor suffering in order to destroy the great disease in verse 23. And it reads, even all doctors eliminate illness with unpleasant medical treatment. So in order to overcome manifold sufferings, I should put up with little discomfort.
That was any Tachitan driven to Tether member Kunjan, Suji Medewa, Chons Zambaye, name never Cheva Chendo, Chanju Kajian, Donga Shindu Chunga TV, Na, Kovi Donga Mambo Tang, Shambi, Cherdo, Kaji Medewa Chung Dea, Zerber Chadi, Ranjing, Tupad Maybe, Donga Shiver Chivicheros.
The section is rather clear. Let's read through that. All physicians will employ slightly disagreeable cures to make an unpleasant sickness go away. Likewise, since the austerities to achieve enlightenment are very small sufferings, one should bear the small sufferings of the austerity to destroy the many sufferings of cyclic existence. In this way, one pacifies boundless sufferings of self and others.
Rather than the Lagoras, Beno, Chetangi, Charang, Zuchik to Gorslavaina, Setu Marata. The Nagarism Sugmaras, Yinaya, Pig, Natsajiki Tony, 아니 maybe 인케랑기 라바 고고도 감바 고고도 타나 지 로침바 니양친 고고도 슬라바이나 아니 나사디 타야기 체도 로동체 투여라서 로동체 투고라서.
So when we imagine a certain situation, like for example, you're told one day that your finger need to be cut. We'll find that prospect to be quite fearsome. And also, inevitably, we wouldn't like to do it. It would be scary. But then, if you're told that if you don't do that, then it might be that later on, your whole arm need to be amputated. It might even result in a leg or so being amputated. It might get to, whatever sickness you have, it might get to your liver, your lung, or whatever, and they have to be taken out. Then you think that actually, if you only have to give up one finger in order to save the rest, why not? You would continue, you would agree to do that because in comparison with other things, it will appear to you slight.
Tinza pige gago khabardu thombaina ro goba khari yeba thombaina ani kewa juni dunga nyoya dilaya samthubaina ani tsendi luti ledong chialaya tezam zawani meba seri bachik jaji yadam yunguyasres ro.
Particularly when you consider the great suffering that we've already experienced from one lifetime to the next in all different states within cyclic existence. And when you consider the enormity of all those sufferings that we've already experienced, then you'll have no doubt with respect to having to put up with some difficulties or discomfort in this life that is related to pursuing the state of enlightenment.
Kewa chimi dungar, kewa ni kewa gyuni tachi dungar sayadi lola ya khor matu ge wangi and se de zamandun tungu yo maras kanji ngamzu phugyang rimbula ya tungu yo mare phugyang rimbula ya samla tam tu me banza ani dunga chunjun jile ya ani se matu la de di odireshas kanji sozu ge da 통계 퇴견 용자의 견을
So why is it that we're still incapable of bearing with the hardships that are involved with pursuing the state of liberation? The state of enlightenment. Well, it is because we do not really think of the sufferings that are still awaiting for us in future lifetimes. For so many future lifetimes that we are still yet to experience. We're mostly concerned with what we experience in this life, and that makes us incapable of bearing sufferings and hardships. In that sense, we cannot think long-term. We don't see long-term, the bigger picture. We can only see and think of what occurs to us in this lifetime. And with this narrow-minded view, we find it really difficult to bear with sufferings and difficulties.
Dina nganzu gida nganzu legendary shigoros ra legendary shigor dina ya legendary ya same thing ni ngibani bitoni yiche di ta khagbu shure dos ra di yo baina ani kewa chimi gi samloti jaja jatamba ta yong tu yosares kewa chimi gi samlochi yo baina kewa ni kewa gyun rogo ya samlochi yo baina 아니 대바 동아 문제비 상론이 랑치스여레 진짜 계원이 계원 균이다 동아 용수고 토비 상로 레온디다 딜 탄득 로지 레온디 아니 쳔디 르당치야디 가서다 지 외신 삼바스는 문도 다 공구 여버지 통온디 아니 르동지 투구여서레스라 땡 계원 담바 소고 투야디 가서 부양 림부기 내주도 통구여자 아니 가서 샤드 쇼기 자와 총자리디 아니 동네치 투고라스 베나 룰이야 체마수가래 단데 빼샤데 아니 지 체마고야 체도 이건 진주 땡고 총이야 고 땡체니 아니 루 동아세치 제투도스 그 딜에 태점 싸우니 매바 비기 이간 때는 제투고라서 이는 안도 디 마투야 가르스나 딜 기비기 아니 데두고 라단디 로라야 균 메디 잠발라 디 투기여서 말했어.
And particularly when you think about it in terms of karma, actions and their results, if you have heartfelt trust on the bottom of your heart in the working of karma, it will make a difference in how you view future lifetimes and so forth. It will not be difficult for you to think of what will occur to you in future lifetimes. So if you trust that next lifetimes exist, not only that future lifetimes exist, but that you will go from one lifetime to the next over and over again in countless future rebirths that you will take, you start to think of what would be the common attitude, the most basic attitude that you will still have in so many future lifetimes awaiting for us in the future. The common fundamental wish would be to experience no pain and to be happy or to be well. That will exist throughout all of our future lifetimes. So if there is a way to make that happen, to attain happiness and well-being and to eliminate suffering and pain, it makes sense to put up with suffering of problems, difficulties in this life, even as far as even to having to relinquish this life in order to make sure that we avoid pain and suffering for many lifetimes in the future and we attain a state of happiness and well-being. This is the way that great beings think. This is the way that far-sighted, broad-minded great beings think. They look at the great purpose and the smaller purpose, and they make a certain decision, informed decision, pursuing the great purpose rather than focusing on something that is slight. It's like if you have a thorn stuck in your hand, and you know that in order to pull it out, you might have to use a needle to create just some space in order to pull it out, then you will do that. But if you have a thorn and you're scared of needles and you will not agree to do something in order to pull out this thorn, you will still continue to experience everlasting suffering and pain. This is the way that we often behave, don't we?
딜엔도서 간줄 나오는 림나노리아 내 마제 받는 제 제가 취문사 세트. 로 딘지기 샘띵 네버 지어봐나. 다내 제가 취문사 슬라운디 내 제부디 doctor 매바 뇽고 그다세지. 뇽고를 세트. 다 메기와 집이 제부디 동아리 개와 집이 제부디 대와리 아니 메기와 집아나 메기 제부디 다 향기 샤담 수진도 마치바는 그냥 네버 뇽고 세디 same thing 비기 네버 여바나 다디 아니 개와 참매발이야 아니 메기 윌레 참매바 사샤고 이 남인데 다 징뇽고 총바이나 다 베사사리 삼비다 남라지 용그로스 다디 여바이나 아니 세델이야 게버드비엘이야 까지 둘이 가주스 제고 총바이나야 가시 쪼션 제직 용구여서레스 로 땅난줄 디메버 pen 나당한테 디메버디 렌제 칸 시에데마도 대응마 생그띵니 아니 렌젤이야 아니 이체다 아니 네번이 마투비 왕기 아니 렌제 케수스 땅자 소바 아니 케디 케수 마치바이나야 아니 지 방란 주덤 수진 제마투와 남메셔도요 소바 대다 용구여레스 로
Particularly when we think of the characteristics of karma, the last two characteristics of karma are we do not experience the results of actions that we have not done before, and actions done do not go to waste. So if we have trust in those two characteristics from the bottom of our heart, we will know that since actions that I've done do not go to waste, there will come a time in which inevitably I have to experience the results of my own actions. if I've acted virtuously, it will lead to pleasant or happy situations. Whereas if I've created non-virtuous actions, that will result in suffering. And some of the suffering would be unbearable suffering in miserable state of existence. And without applying myself to practices of purification, restraint, and laying down my negative actions, I will definitely have to experience the result of my own actions, and how terrible it would be if I have to experience the maturation of my own negative actions in miserable states of existence, such as hellish state of existence, even in the hell without respite. How terrible that will be. So in this life, I have an opportunity to do something about it, to make sure that I avoid those future suffering. So we can become happy and delighted about being able to do something about it in this life. But often we just speak of karma. We talk about karma without having that deep sense of trust in the working of karma. At least Geshe says that, for himself, he does speak about karma, he does speak about karma in a particular way, and yet, to a certain degree, we downplay the working of karma. We dismiss the working of karma. Or even if we do not downplay and dismiss the working of karma, still we're incapable of properly engaging what we need to take up and to cast aside what needs to be discarded.
데리다 장군은 중국어 지금 송대 남주 조는 세티 베다 지금 냠랭게 아니 네츠 용수 디바인다 남주 조는 세티 라 때 디난기다 비다 니무 자티션도 자 마리비 님보 모지 님보디 도마니 온송도 이시티 다 도마니 온송도 이시 아니 니무바데 CCTV 문님 조통이시비 도마니 온송도 이시 용이라야 아니 잔주샘 자 닌지 다 닌지의 잔주샘 쥐마마이 바지 용이라야 아니 닌종 삼바세 라 닌종 삼바 용이라야 아니 레균제기 레균들의 이치비 조디 베나 레메기버지 제부 레메기버 제바티 야 아니 샘 닝고 리비테는 비기다지 아니 두 코도 손바다비기다 겨바지 거레스 라 메기버 제바티 수수 메기버 제바티 채원디 다 겨바 셈메바 수수 코코는 독송하고 쇼직 남라레라 대난신기 아니 겨바지 거레스 디 여바이나 대마 타도 내가 심바 가리 여바이나야 안르탄친 대마 타도 비기 두드 세야기 돌아야 배전치기로서 어딘한신지 용고그레스 어디선도 아스라.
And particularly when you consider that in terms of karma, as Lama Tsongkhapa said in his 3 principal aspects of the path, a presentation that contains all the key points of the teachings that the Buddha gave, all the key points of the steps of the path of enlightenment. He said that looking at the root of the 84,000 afflictions that we have, the root of that is ignorance. And in order to eliminate ignorance, we need to generate the actual antidote, which is an exalted wisdom that perceptually realizes emptiness. That would be the actual antidote, the direct antidote to the basis of all afflictions that arise in our minds. Wisdom that perceptually realizes emptiness. And in order to then generate that exalted wisdom that perceptually realizes emptiness, we need to generate bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment, and compassion. And in order to generate compassion and bodhicitta, which are uncontrived, we need to develop the determination to live cyclic existence. In order to develop the determination to live cyclic existence, we need to have the deep sense of trust in the working of karma, that virtuous actions produce happiness and non-virtuous actions produce suffering. To the point in which when we reflect upon negativities, non-virtues producing suffering, and we through the trust in the working of karma that we have, we start to think of negative actions that we have done before. We consider them as if we have taken poison. So imagine a situation where you have ingested poison and you've just found out that what you've eaten is poisonous and you will soon die. You will be gripped with a sense of fear and regret, and you will do whatever you can straight away in order to rid yourself of the poison, to counteract the poison that you have in your body. Even if at the moment you're doing something else, you will set that aside and immediately you will do something in order to remedy the poison that could otherwise soon cause your death. And this is the type of attitude that we need to have with the trust that we have in karma. To think of the negative actions, the non-virtuous actions that we've done before, with the intention to purify them, to lay them down, as if we've just taken poison.
제가 normally 대들 멤버 공장스 수지기 메데와 총세 잠바이 네 매바 치버신도 찬출주비까지 장 동할신도 총아 대나 코베 동한 망보다 셴비체도 까지기 메데와 총무대야 소버 차대 랑신기 뒤빠도메 동할 시워치비체로스.
So again, reading through Geta Dhammarincha's commentary to verse 23, it says, all physicians will employ slightly disagreeable cures to make an unpleasant sickness go away. Likewise, since the austerities to achieve enlightenment are very small sufferings, one should bear the small suffering of the austerity to destroy the many sufferings of psychic existence. In this way, one pacifies boundless sufferings of self and others.
Membi gabo chok rende dinan choga doslasha chok indis membi gabe chogan jambe okay chogan jambe ne chembo sowan zepe zeri bala sums tembe suji gi dunghar zamya nyom mogoba ne chembo sobe tab tember zebatan lu tonala ya lu tonala kalo yebitse tonga kavatans se matonga driver kembitsi lu tonga sumbi kawambebo usa.
Having looked at that point, let's look at the next section in the text. So point 3 under the section of that says if one make perseverance, laziness will be arrested and one will be capable of accomplishing enlightenment. Point 3 says, as the king of doctors prescribed gentle rites for healing the great disease, it is reasonable to bear the hardships involved. Again, there are 3 points to that section. The teacher taught a method by which we may be cured of the great disease without even needing to experience the mere suffering associated with curative treatments. Then point B says, giving away one's body when one still finds it difficult to do so is prohibited. And lastly, it says it is taught that one gives away one's body only when one is familiarized with the idea to a certain point, and thus there's no difficulty in giving it away.
Tambonis tembi suji gi dungar zamya nyong mogoba ne chimbo soyo tap temba zebanis. Ta kanji ani temba kadin ching nganzola ya ani lamden na yores ra lamden kharis na chanchu jubi lamden chanchu jubi mato na kawani ya ani dungar nego chona ta di sem mutuba chikwas ina ta chanchu jubi kala ya kaji duri chegoya pena lu tonggoya la soba tindi song yorde ina ya ani chi kaddu ina pigila ya tanggoya tindi chi sunguyo mares ra ani tamki ton kerang tong matu kala ya ani zaman chin tonggo sunguyo mari tong maren kala ya ko tong tuji yores tong rembi tuji ani tuti tong rembi tuti ta 고급도 마서 당진 지지는 고급 주고를 봐도 양지 뒤만 받든지래 계란 균 아니 생그 숨을 까래 루동고도 딘지 숨고요 말했어 페이지도 된다 쪼르 딘지래서.
The point that Shantideva is making in this section is that the Buddha taught the path that leads to the state of enlightenment. Taking into consideration that we cannot bear the suffering that still await us in cyclic existence, the Buddha taught the way out of it, the path that leads to liberation. And you might fear the difficulties and austerities that are involved with following that path. But here, Shantideva is pointing out that it's not that in all situations you will experience suffering. It's not that suffering or difficulties will always be there. And also, it's not that in any given situation you'll have to give away your own body. There are certain criteria that Shantideva mentions here for when you can give away your body. First of all, you need to be skillful in doing that. You need to develop skillful means in which you decide if it is a situation in which it is suitable for you to give away your own body. Is there a purpose in doing that? Is it that a great purpose will be achieved if you do that? And also, have you reached that level of development which permits you to give away your own body? Is it time for you to practice something like that? It is likely that what Shantideva is indicating here is that if you get to the point in which you could give away your body, but you would do it with a great sense of fear and great sense of regret or reluctance, it's an indication that for you, it's not the right time yet to practice something as giving away your own body. You should do so only when you get to the point in which you'll do that without hesitation.
Rada, Temple Gardenchi, Takila Tuchi Chemba, Temple Garden Sonashi, Kongipe, and then Tanis Mangomi, Lamji, Tenangri Mato Peki, Hajan Tataway, Lam, and Power Dindichi, Tenangamares, 7 Amalaya, Soje Power Dindawa, Member Choki Manzetis, Choga Shield Jambuye, Neche Bam so on says.
The Buddha, in his skillful Ming and in great kindness, taught a path that is free from the two extremes, which means that without resulting to something that is radical, as Shantideva says in verse 24. But the Supreme Physician does not employ such ordinary remedies. With a very gentle procedure, he remedies the boundless great ailments.
Chanju Dibitse, Kachet. Nesui, Soji, Pawan Dindam, Tumbi Ombo, Membi Choke Manze de Lam Devi, Drevu Deva Tobi Tap, Choga Shindun Jambo, Ngashin, Tobatan, Deva Sonum Tani Bambaye, Kovan Kamgubi, Mumbi Nechimbo, Bami Sovan Zebi, Kajela Jiva Kalaris.
The commentary says, while one is working to achieve enlightenment, the Supreme Physicians, the able one, does not employ austerities like the common cures to cure sicknesses. He heals the boundless heavy sickness of having to wander in cyclic existence due to the afflictions with the method of a happy path leading to a happy result, without the extremes of being tired and exhausted or sensual decadence. Therefore, how it is suitable to be afraid of the austerities.
Nibo Luton la Gavi Loyubice, Tonga Gavanes. Tonga Gavanes. Sema Lazo Jembalan, Jembe Tomer Jones, Telecom the Chin in Rimgirang Shayatons.
Now the next point in verse 24, I think. 25, sorry. Is giving away one's body when one still finds it difficult to do so is prohibited, right? So verse 25, let's look at this verse. It says, at the beginning, the guide applies the giving of such things as vegetables. Later, Having become accustomed to that, one may progressively give away even one's own flesh.
토마르 짐발라 마콘 비치 센총당 츠마라 소바 짐발랑 젬바 상기기 토물 조런젤라 델라 칼로 메바 콤니 치니르 기 랑기 샤얀 똥어 인비소스
In explaining the stipulations that are made here, it says initially when one is not even habituated to offer vegetables and the like, the guide, the Buddha, induces one to train in the generosity of giving food, drink, vegetables, and so forth. When one has become habituated to do this without difficulty, then subsequently one also gradually offer one's flesh.
Sumbat 체 마동안단 자와 인지 체 마동안단
Tsuma tangwa. Tsuma sanongutse.
이기르다 되게 제시마스 디 건다 체 마동안단 자와 컴비치 르 동아 송베스 딱다래 송베 까와메바니스 강지 랑기 르라니 최소 따위 로제바 대체 샬라 속동아 텔라가와 지시여스
The last point in relation to that says, it is taught that one gives away one's body only when one is familiarized with the idea to a certain point, and thus there is no difficulty in giving it away. In verse 26, which reads, at such a time when I've generated a mind that regards my body as being like vegetables, then what hardship will there be when it comes to giving away my flesh?
Verse 25.
26.
You read verse 25.
Really?
Oh, maybe not.
Yeah, verse 26. At such a time when I've generated a mind that regards my body as being like vegetables, then what hardship will there be when it comes to giving away my flesh?
대들 콤베 강기치 랑기 르라니 츠마 동아 속다위 로게니 디치 샬라 소보 동이 텔라카와 지시여 중세견 메베 까젤은 지고 미릭소스
The commentary says when one has, through familiarity, generated the awareness of the generosity of one's body as the generosity of a vegetable or the like, then one can offer one's flesh and such. Where lies the difficulty in that? Since there is not the slightest difficulty, it is unsuitable to be afraid.
다시바 동화 지바 텔라 동화 매징스 류동화 텔라 소 동화 매징 데비 게비 가와리발라 셰 람 지비 림발라 민키비 간살라 르손 메데바 예자 케발라 람 드발라 케발라 까지 이 동화 메바타 테나 셈바 쳔보 코와 네발라 규위 규메바타 균센 테나 람 드발라 태바 멤발레 태바 쳔보티 케바 셰바타 테나 찬주스 미쳐발라 길루고 미리고스
Then the last point in that section, the section that concludes the abandoning the laziness that is disheartened about virtue, says that there is no suffering in that and happiness increases, therefore it is reasonable to take joy in that. There are four points in that section. Although there is physical and mental discomfort for a person unknowledgeable in the stages of accomplishing that path, there is no suffering from such hardships for one who is knowledgeable. Then, therefore, for a great being, there is no cause for despairing in the prospect of remaining in cyclic existence. And following that, it says, due to such reasons, in terms of progressing along the path, they are explained to be more knowledgeable than the Hinayanis, which means that in following the Mahayana path, then you develop more skills in dealing with that. Then the last point is, therefore, it is unreasonable to be disheartened in the Bodhisattva's conduct.
Teta lam dribala lam dribi rimbala minkibi kansa lusum mediwa yekya kebala kaji yidunga meba se ta lam dribala ya ke manki ki ani lam la ya chadang teba sumki lams ani thamkila thuji chimudem demakadin ching diji son yoros ro ani chik tambo nyini ani teba chimbu gi lam la ya lo menu nge chola ya ani teba membi gi lam tenchini en di gi chik thojan thadu ani dajum bi kongbang soba o dindi gi lam la ya tik tene da dajum bi kongba thob sawi jela ya ta shi ni chik ani sosu chik bu dewa zuni mendi go simja thamji gi ani dedu la ya ani thugur sheko dang soba ta dindi kalam nanshini ya thidang rambadi ani choga jambu sati dindi jile ya gogo yo sare sira.
When the outline states, although there is physical and mental discomfort for a person unknowledgeable in the sense of accomplishing the path, there is no suffering from such hardship for one who is knowledgeable or one who is skilled. So the Buddha taught the three vehicles for the sake of sentient beings whose mind needs to be tamed, which means that for the sake of those who are not ready for the time being to enter from the very outset into the Mahayana path, the Buddha taught the Hinayana path. For those who are, for the time being, concerned about their own happiness and well-being, the Buddha taught the path that leads to the state of happiness and well-being for one's own sake, and thereby attaining the state of an arhat. Not only the Buddha taught that, also the Buddha taught the means by which those who have followed that path at some point will also develop interest in pursuing the welfare of other sentient beings with a sense of compassion or concern for other living beings. So since the Buddha in his skillful means taught that, you can say that the Buddha as a physician prescribed gentle rites or gentle means for sentient beings to engage the cure for their obscurations.
This is lam dribi rimbala minki basadi peshi teba membi rikjen tawo ro kanji teba chimbi gi lam la ya lo meningi ti ani lam dribala ya minki bashan digi gires ro da teba chimbi gi lam la ya lo meningi tela ya ani chik simjan thamji gi chede kerang lu tang gors lamna an lo shungu marwas da teba chimbi lam la ya lo nyungi jila ya lo du yungi jila ya simjan thamji gi ya mingi ani tsewa ninji chenpodan chanju sen timji chong dengi jila ya ani di chede kerang lu tang gors labay na gashi tro shengwan simjan thamji la ya pemba jigyo na kar tangu chong na ya ani gawa gong ya ma to chik semla medewa chong se chan leg marwas o dindi chik.
And when it says, although there is physical and mental discomfort for a person unknowledgeable in the steps of accomplishing that path. So a person that is unknowledgeable in the steps of accomplishing that path, Geshe Brekenside refers to someone that follows the Hinayana path, in that they are not skillful or knowledgeable about the steps of following the Mahayana path. So for them to give up even their own body in a certain situation would be something that they might be not comfortable with. But for someone who is skillful and knowledgeable in that path, the Mahayana path, which means that it is a person that has cultivated loving kindness and compassion to sentient beings. They've cultivated bodhicitta for the sake of sentient beings. When they encounter a situation where they have to give away the body for the sake of others, they would do it with a sense of delight, with a sense of joy, thinking that, of course, I will do that if it benefits other living beings. If what it takes to be of use or benefit to sentient beings, I'll do whatever it takes, whatever I'm needed to do.
자베나마 딕보 방실 동감미 키비체나 머감미 데들고보 또보다 딕비 셈다 룰레니스.
In that vein, when we look at verse 27, it says, due to having abandoned negativities, there is no suffering. And due to skill, there is no unhappiness. Thus, mind and body are harmed by wrong conceptions and negativities.
제베나마야 잔주심비 닌지 삼바타바티스. 데레다 르동알야 르기 동아메데스. 다 셈그 쇠투바이나 아니 르레야 카코 카두 카르체바이나야 아니 동아디 아니 뇽조도스. 카콜야다 동아 추르이기 말았어. 동아메데스 고숨기 디바타다 밤비처 르동 튜란 키비체나 이람가와 멜라 겐젠 데더 칸자기 다단 다키 오셴바 로보토보탄 소주소 디비 셈다 르르 네바 인기 셈바 쳔본노나 네비 귤로비소스 데달야 네비 귤로비소스.
It says, Bodhisattvas with pure thought of compassion do not have physical sufferings when they offer their body, in the sense that looking at the state of body and mind, although there would be physical discomfort or pain that might be involved in giving away one's body, still with a certain attitude, with an attitude that seeks the benefit of others, that physical discomfort will be reduced by one's mental attitude, or in some situation there would be no physical pain at all. So bodhisattvas with pure thought of compassion do not have physical suffering when they offer the body, because they have abandoned the negativities of the three doors. And they also do not experience mental dislike, because they are skillful regarding the time of offering the body. Therefore, for those reasons, the wrong conceptions of grasping at the self of persons and grasping at mind, and the negativities of killing and so forth harm mind and body. Yet, the great bodhisattvas have abandoned these causes for harm.
Tadisungudas dipa any gashilaya and lutonse dunga yoyada gashilaya muyong ikabakares. Pena jase chanju sembasulaya lutonlaya dunga muyong karesna dunga yoy gyudi pigi and lobotoba and maribatan and di konelambi chadan lo sobe and lulaya dunga kigores. Te dobainza delia tachidu pigi nimbuten drobainza and lulaya dunga yoy good dobainza kunzulaya dunga yomares. Nanzulaya dunga yonza dunga gychanzan samainza and dunga legores.
You might wonder, why is it then that for some giving away one's body would be painful, and for other beings giving away one's body will not be painful? If you wonder why is there a difference between different beings, for bodhisattvas, for example, who have given up misconceptions, which means that they've eliminated misconceptions, they've eliminated wrong views and the like, they've eliminated anger and attachment, they've overcome all of those states of mind, they therefore also overcame the causes of suffering. Whereas for us, we have all the causes in place for the experience of suffering. So for us, acting in such a way, giving away even our own body, would be still painful.
Gerda nibas tena sembachembu kowan nebalaya gyumebanis sonum kin ludela kebayin sem dena jendon kowan negani inji chenda chidi gyos.
Now let's look at the next verse, number 28, that comes under the heading of 28 or 28. Comes under the heading of, therefore, for a great being, there is no cause for despairing in the prospect of remaining in cyclic existence. Reading through verse 28, it says, if their bodies are happy due to the merits and their minds are happy due to their skill, then even if they remain in cyclic existence for the sake of others, why would the compassionate ones be disheartened?
우선다 셈번넘스 chanju semba gyasi chanju semba nam jinso sonum jinjebu lu dela langdor tang tomba ni gi tyana kheba yin chanju semba tawdu ngodar sem dewa shendu lu ko ne kya inji jentani jedi kyo gyume bicheres.
Now the commentary says Bodhisattvas have physical happiness or physical pleasure or comfort through the merits of generosity and so forth. And they have mental happiness, like the Bodhisattva ever crying, through being skillful regarding what has to be adopted and what has to be rejected and the meaning of emptiness. So since there is no cause for suffering, why should those with compassion tire even though they remain in cyclic existence for the purpose of others?
아니 니 동안 요쇼 something인기 강사지 뭐이나 아니 동안 토도 밥나 동안 레바이냐 더 디기 아니 심전 탐지기 동안 요이기 아니 고쳐버 쇼 없다위기 로디게 투요라스 데데 투와이나 아니 동ar기 동안디 에 용기여서 말아서라.
So when you think about the training that such a bodhisattva undergoes, if we think of for the welfare of sentient beings, for the happiness of sentient beings, may I be able to take upon myself the suffering of pain that befalls them. When they experience suffering and pain, may I experience that instead. If you train your mind in thinking about it, and there comes a time in which you experience difficulties and suffering of problem in relation to working for the sake of others, you'll be able to take it up with a light-hearted attitude. You'd be willing to take it up much to a greater extent if you have trained your mind with thinking that you're doing it for the sake of others, and even if you experience difficulties in that, you're willing to take them up.
레다 남주다 야지 찬주 삼보 초기 투섬 shedan bet logare dosra 야지 찬주 삼보 초 비일야 지 아니 구zul야 아니 마데바드 뇽실레바이나 아니 대마 타우드다 지 아니 심제 탐지기 동하드다티 아니 닌디기 지 나사디기 아니 비 가서다 지 아니 고다마스는 체진 수 아니 니 토들레바 쇼상상기 아니 투섬 기게서라스 아니 디기 심제 탐지기 동안 요야디 니 요한디 고쇼 쇼상비 아니 뭐는 딘디경기여서라스.
It makes sense when we think of the trainings that bodhisattvas undergo. They train themselves in thinking at a time in which they experience physical pain or physical discomfort. They train in thinking, may I be able to take upon myself all the suffering and problems and of others? May I be able to experience this discomfort, pain, and so forth in lieu of all the sufferings of other sentient beings. May all the suffering of sentient beings ripen upon me. This is the way that bodhisattvas train.
당한주 동안에 슬레바이는 람서 테마타도 같이 nga 만나쇼 nga 마사쇼 슬라지 아니 군조온들은 물랑게를 소바 테스치 아니 제강고 동안용 바이나 아니 심진신 세또 가르치고 좀 제제 수수 동아세에
Well, this is the way that they train. When we look at the way that we still think, at the moment in which something slight happens to us, when we become sick or when there's some irritation or discomfort, we immediately think may I not experience that. We might make prayers, we might go and have a ritual done or what have you, in order to, in pursuing that way of thinking, may I not get sick. When we experience other types of trivial sufferings, even insofar as sufferings of being hungry or thirsty, we end up harming others, thinking that through that, my suffering might be eliminated. So we might kill others, cut others, boil others, cook others, and so forth, in order to make sure that we avoid slight suffering. Totally different to a Bodhisattva attitude, don't you find? So therefore, when we think of our attitude, Geshe says that at least when he thinks of himself, he recognizes how hard it is to train in the way that Bodhisattvas do.
아니 심전 탐지기 동아디 니토도 파버쇼 상상도지 심전 탐지기 동아디 니 고쳐버쇼 상상도지 라 심전 탐지기 된데 아니 니 동안 용기 니토도 용쇼스 딘지 뭐는 잡토와나 아니 샤데 약슈디 디차고서레스라.
When we get sick, when we experience pain, we might immediately resort to asking for a puja to be done on our behalf, or to go to see a doctor. Sometimes the treatment that we might receive involves with harming others, either taking the meat of others, using products based on blood or what have you, that comes at the expense of others. So often this is a way that we react when we experience suffering, sickness, and so forth. But then when you think of doing pujas for the sake of eliminating sickness or eliminating your problems, the best type of puja that you could have would be to think, may I be able to take upon myself the suffering of others at a time in which you experience suffering. When at the time in which you experience pain and suffering, think, may my suffering be in lieu of the sufferings of others. That would be the best puja that you can do at a time in which you get sick or you experience pain. Shall we leave it here for now? So we still have next week for pushing ahead with chapter number 7. So I believe that we've finished with how to... Dumba, Sundur. So we have next week for hopefully finishing with the 7th chapter from Shantideva's text, the chapter that deals with cultivating joyous effort. So there's still hope for us, fingers crossed. So let's do the dedication prayers. May I quickly become a Guru Buddha and lead all transmigrated beings without exception to that state. May the precious Supreme Bodhicitta not yet born arise. May that arisen not decline but increase more and more. In this land encircled by snowy mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. The path of Chimrazik and Gyatso, please remain until samsara ends. You uphold the subduer's moral way, serves as the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjunath's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplishes magnificent prayers honoring the 3 jewels, protector of myself and others. Your disciples, please live long.
Thank you.
Yeah, so tomorrow it's Lama Tsongkhapa Day in Ganden Namchu. So we start in the morning at 9:30 with Guru Puja. I think that Annie is supposed to bring all the food offering that we're going to distribute for Christmas, probably at 8:30. So I don't know what the goal is, but probably she will need some help with setting it up. So if you are around, Annie will probably appreciate that.
And just an announcement to the Sangha. Lama Zopa Rinpoche has contributed to the Sangha's lunch tomorrow for Laman's Kappa Day. So there will be a lunch served at 12:30 for the Sangha at the cafe.
All right, thank you. So there will be also lunch served to the Sangha at 12:30. So don't have breakfast. Make sure that you keep some space for lunch. Thanks, Shannon. Ngадre tsoro. So tsane karan lunch ito na.
Okay.
Ani digyan ke tangwaro hai khan.
Komare.
Okay. Lasso. Ayo.